You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, Patreon members. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name's Albert Padilla, and this is episode 552. We'll edit all that out. It's our series finale of the Bad Batch, and wow, bittersweet in a lot of different ways. I have so many thoughts. We're trying to do this show right on the heels of this thing coming out. It came out today as of this recording here on May 1st. I've had a chance now to watch it probably about 3 or 4 times. Of course, we have all our notes, but every time I go back to the notes, there's something else that I want to talk about. So I suspect this show may go a little bit longer just because how much stuff happened in the show, while at the same time, not enough probably happened for me at certain points, depending on how you look at it. But I'll get this guy's opinion as well on things, and he's with us as always. Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Yeah, you're right. It is sad to see the series end, but we got our happy ending. And I think that was something that we know Star Wars likes to end on an uplifting note. And I think you're right, though. I think we're going to have a lot of conversation about all the teases. I think we had exchanged a couple of texts today of a lot of teases that weren't really paid off. And so where do they go from here? A lot of things to speculate on, for the longer term, for the short and medium term of where this goes next, and where Omega goes. And hey, we got an epilogue. So that's kind of a thing in animation these days, I guess.
Yeah. All right, before we get started, I know you got some thank yous, and then we'll kind of segue into what we've got coming up, and then we'll just dive right into the breakdown.
Yeah, as always, a huge thank you to our Patreon members, especially those that are now part of the tribe. Danny, Rob, Mike, Lauren, Dante, Rist, Justin Jackson, Sharkman, Dan, Daz, Isabella, Uncle Leon, Josh, Jacob, and Reader Reborn. And then, of course, the Delusions Grander members, our top tier, Rod, CJ, Alex, Steve, and Das. Thank you all so much for your support. If you're curious about Patreon, cantinacast.com/Patreon. We just did a Phantom Menace top 3 moments with several of our Patreon members, which was a fantastic and a lot of fun. So we hope everyone is enjoying that audio. cantinacast.com/Patreon if you'd like to check some of that out. And then if you would like to join us on a live stream, cantinacast.com/YouTube. You could be like one of these amazing people: Steph, Sky, Gaming with Miles, Qui-Gon J, My Star Wars Guys, JJ Skywalker, One Up versus CPU, and JW Englehart. He's actually here twice. So
maybe Miles is watching too. You never know.
There we go. We have double Dinglehart family.
Yeah. Thank you guys for joining us here on the live show. And we understand, we don't usually have we were talking about it before we came on air. We don't have as big of a turnout the day of because people are probably literally watching it right now. So, and that's fine, but we definitely want to get our thoughts out there as soon as possible. Programming notes. So we've got this Saturday, we will be in Austin actually physically in Austin together doing a show for May the 4th be with you all. So that'll be a kind of a tribute show. We'll be going around interviewing folks, getting their thoughts on, why they love Star Wars and what's their favorite part of Star Wars and a number of other things. We'll be interviewing some of the folks that have put together the May the 4th be with you all event. If you guys are in and around the Austin metropolitan area and you have nothing to do this Saturday, please consider swinging by Central Machine Works here in Austin. I think everything officially starts off at 3 p.m. Central, and goes all the way to 11. I think we've got a kids parade, kids costumes, or some other. There's like a burlesque thing that happens after hours for the adults. There's nothing, no nudity or anything like that, unless you consider an unclothed Wookiee. But it's about as crazy as it gets. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of people that love Star Wars. It's crazy how many people turn out and are there to eat pizza, drink beer, and just celebrate Star Wars in a great way, and all for a great cause. So again, that'll be Saturday, pretty much all day this 4th. On top of that, we're looking at trying to get a way station in this Sunday as well. And then Jonesy and I will be back to talk about Tales of the Empire. And we're going to break down, kind of have a character spotlight for Morgan Elsbeth, since that will be launching here in 2 days, I think, at this point. So that should be exciting. And then next week, because the following weekend is Mother's Day, next Wednesday, Lauren and I will be back to do Bug. So that'll be the short story. We think is pretty, I would say 99% sure is based on Morgan Elsbeth. But we'll break down that story, and then we're looking to do another show right after that. We'll do a Tales of the Tales of the Empire Spotlight show, and this time will be on Morgan Elsbeth. So we'll just follow up and have a Morgan Elsbeth week, that, if you will, for that show.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. And then we're going to get to we're going to see Phantom Menace, of course, this weekend, and on I think mine's on Tuesday. So we'll come back around at soon on Patreon as well and do a Phantom Menace 25 years later. So really excited to see what our theater experiences are like comparing to what we had back in '99 and what it is. So that's going to be a lot of fun too. So
yeah,
it's time to celebrate. This is like Star Wars month. It's not Star Wars Day on May the 4th. It's like Star Wars month. We have a whole month of being spoiled, and then all of the stuff leading up to Acolyte. Man, a lot of video game. I mean, there's so much news right now too, and things coming out. The video games picking up, a lot of sales. If you're go check out StarWars.com for video game sales and things like that too, if you're in that arena too. So a lot of things to go check out. So even if PlayStation doesn't pan out for whatever reason, go to StarWars.com. Just keep going there. There's lots of deals, lots of stuff. Go check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, enough of the jibba jabba. Let's get into our main discussion, which is the cavalry has arrived. And Jonesy, I'm going to give you the floor first, to kind of give us your opening thoughts on everything you loved, and I guess general thoughts, what you loved about it, and maybe even just touch on how the series kind of ended as a whole. And we'll get into more of that, of course, throughout the episode.
Yeah, I mean, hey, we didn't lose anybody. So that's fantastic, right? I mean, we didn't lose our core characters of the Bad Batch, right? So I think that was a relief. It was a little touch and go there for a little while. There were a lot of moments where it seemed like you were going to be right with Wrecker. Wrecker was a little worse for wear, or really worse for wear. Starting back last episode, and it just seemed to add on. I can't believe we got a dismemberment. I was beside myself. I'm like, holy crap. Crosshair's not supposed to die, even though I said he was going to die. And there it goes. I was like, I can't believe they took his hand. That was just...
Of all the shows, too, no lightsabers. Well, we had a lightsaber with Ventress, but yeah.
Hey, before we start, lots of spoilers tonight. This is a spoiler-ridden show. It is not a spoiler-free show. We are ripping the Band-Aid off on everything. Sorry we didn't warn you up front. If you've been with us for a while, you kind of know this is how we do it. But yeah, this is a spoiler show. Sorry, we're not used to do this night of, so we have to make that out there. But yeah, so everybody, kind of a happily ever after, which is nice. Everything really ended on an upbeat note. We got some closure with the clones, I think, in general. Maybe there's still a bigger picture to be had. I think there's a lot of stories you could still tell within all of this. It was kind of cool to see an older Hunter, right, an older Omega show up in the epilogue, and to have a little bit of closure there about what's next and where she was going. At the first, I really thought that she was getting into the Phantom. I swear it was the Phantom at first.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I just, at a glance, I was like, oh, man. And like, oh, no, that's not it. But, but it was good. I mean, it was a fun episode. The Zilla Beast, we got our big monster of the week type of thing there. Everything played out relatively safe, I think, for what we had, although there were some tense moments. But, everything kind of worked out the way we wanted it to. I was really happy that Rampart got screwed himself at the end, so that made me very happy. It was really nice to see an Imperial die, like, just being wretched. Yeah, there was no ambiguity to it. He was just out for himself, so it was kind of good to see that happen. I actually felt a little sorry for Nala Se, but she was taking responsibility for what her part in all of this was too. So we'll get into all the details, but overall, a solid episode, I think, as a season. And looking back at the season, a pretty solid season, right? It maybe didn't hit all the emotional cues that I think season 2 in particular might have, but still a really solid season, and overall really good series, like a series that I really enjoyed. We talked a little bit about it on Discord earlier today about kind of what we would grade it all. So if you're curious, get, cantinacast.com/Discord to check that out. But anyway, what are your thoughts?
Well, so let me start with more of the technical stuff. I mean, 50 minutes. First off, I think we even said it was going to be between 45, 50 minutes. No secret episode, which right. I wasn't trying to poo-poo the idea. I love the idea and the concept. It just it never made sense to me. Like from a business perspective, you would not do that. Right. It just doesn't make any sense, but yeah, it was 50 minutes. So a longer episode is really the point there. I enjoyed the fact that we got more, and we needed more. Honestly, we talked about this going into this episode that
they had a lot to do.
A lot to do. And man, like, to kind of, I'll just segue. It's a little bit later in my talking points, but I'll talk about it now. When I was doing the show notes, it was like there were so many things that happened, and it was just, it did not lift up at all. It was just go, event after event after event, and little things that we knew were going to got wrapped up, and we just pushed on. No moment to breathe. The momentum was just kind of crazy throughout this episode, but at the same time, it didn't necessarily feel rushed. it just felt like there was a lot condensed down into small amounts, and I was okay with that. Like I really enjoyed the pacing of the episode. It never felt slow. It never felt like it was rushed, but it definitely was moving and did not stop. There was a lot of vigor behind it.
Well, and that was really evident, I think, early on with the jungle sequence, that they didn't just jump right into Tantus. The Bad Batch still had to pick up where they left off and to be able to get to Tantus, or to the facility, to the mountain, and go through the process of getting through the jungle. So it didn't just all of a sudden they pop in. That still took a while to get through.
Yeah, no, for sure. The operatives, we finally got, put all that to rest, right? They're no tech.
A lot of hanging chads, man.
There's still a lot of hanging chads with the storyline, but no tech, which, again, narratively doesn't make sense. They've never done anything like this in Star Wars. I went on this whole soapbox about Rey and that thing when that was going around. They don't do that, right? It's just not what they do. So let's not bring that up again. It turned out not to be a clone of Crosshair, which I thought was a kind of a cool idea. But again, what's really the point? We know the evil's Empire. There's no way we don't have to emphasize that and punch people in the privates, right? To re-emphasize that in any way. So that's all that would have done.
The operatives did kind of mirror the Bad Batch a little bit, though, which was a little bit of nice symmetry there. Like they had some consistencies a little bit with their Bad Batch counterparts in a way. Of course, they weren't at full strength on the Bad Batch side, but
yeah,
it was cool to see a little bit of symmetry there.
Yep. But at the same time, like, again, the idea that Tech and Crosshair, like, theorizing about that stuff and speculating on that stuff has again always been the fun part to me of Star Wars ever since back, and you guys have already heard my story, but back from the early 90s, right? Just sitting around and theorizing about what's going to happen. And I love that. That it feels like it's part of the DNA in Star Wars. And yet at the same time, these days with the internet and leaks and people vying to be right all the time and laying down their life for their own headcanon, some of that does get kind of lost these days, right? The spirit of it's gone, unfortunately. But nonetheless, great theories. None of that really happened. At least we got some solid answers there. And just so many questions. Like, I have so many freaking questions about a lot of stuff still. At the same time, I do feel like I have come to closure. I'm going to talk about the ending. I've already seen some folks put some comments in our chat tonight for YouTube. Thank you guys so much. Rebels is never going to be topped in my lifetime. I would imagine. I don't think anything's going to come out and then top that. So I would still say Rebels is up there. I don't know if I'm ready to place the Bad Batch as a whole in second place in terms of what my favorite animation it is.
That would be tough. Yeah,
that would be tough. But I will say this, like, my reaction to the ending of this, I think, has been different than a lot of people. I've seen some people side with me, but I would say, like, Rebels has still got the best ending for me, but this tops the Clone Wars ending as far as I'm concerned. And I'm talking about all endings in Star Wars, okay? And there's a reason why. I'll probably we'll talk about it tonight, but I want to do like a video or a single, like a solo thing, or maybe a jeditorial or something. I need to get out what I'm feeling about that ending because it hit me harder than I think, the way I think they expected it to hit some people. But there's something very personal about it. And
which ending? Like
I'm talking about the epilogue. Sorry, the epilogue.
Oh, the epilogue? Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I say ending, I mean how it ended more than anything else.
Okay.
But that epilogue and just the father or the parent and child relationship and sending that child off, that's what that was about. Yeah. And unless you've been there, either as a child, you have one perspective, right? If you're a kid and you're leaving home, you probably we all have those memories of what that was like to leave the house for the first time, right?
Right.
But it's a very different perspective as a parent and watching your child leave and trusting them to go. And that's where it hit me. Holy crap, that hit me so hard. I was bawling as I was doing the show notes. Not when I watched the episode, but as I was writing the show notes, I was crying because it was starting to really kind of, weigh on my shoulders. So I'll get into all that at some point. But the ending was just, I don't know, the epilogue was amazing as far as I'm concerned. Let's see, what else I have in here? I was worried, like you said, we had predicted Wrecker would be the one to die. And throughout that episode, like, everybody else felt safe. Like when Hunter at the very beginning, I think there was when he was marked as safe and given that they weren't setting, I figured like, okay, they weren't set here. As soon as they kind of walked him off the ledge of like, hey, no, we're doing this together. I'm like, oh, okay, well, Crosshair's safe. But I could not figure out what was going on with Wrecker because they kept cutting back to him. He was, bleeding out, about to die. just struggling throughout the episode the entire time. And then during the fight, right, he had that gash on his chest, which looked like it was larger than it normally was, or I couldn't tell, but it was very prominent. They kept focusing on it. And then when that spear came down and it was in his chest, I was like, holy crap, that's just going to go right through his chest. And that's it. We're done with Wrecker kind of thing. But they tease that throughout. And I'm with you. Like, I'll get your thoughts on that. But I just was happy that we got the happily ever after for these guys, because they certainly have earned it at this point.
Well, and even Echo, right? Echo had the dagger in his shoulder from the dude with the not lightsaber swords, whatever they were, kind of like vibroblade looking things.
Vibroblades, yeah. Maybe.
So even Echo was just, it was a little touch and go at times. You're right, though. I mean, with Wrecker, you just didn't know what was going on, and he was really struggling. And you really, like, for the first time, he lost that sense of humor, right? He's just like, I'll just keep going, but you could just tell he was just willing himself to be able to do it. And I think, to be fair, all of them were in some ways doing it. But I actually was a little bit worried about Crosshair, especially when they took his hand. I was beside myself. I was like, you're like, no way. Like, I couldn't believe we did that in this show. But, I was like, okay, nobody is really safe here. I thought they did a good job of actually making you feel no one was 100% safe, though. I think that was really important for them to establish. Even if they all end up being safe at the end of the day, they were all in peril danger and really kind of outmatched. And they had to really pull together and work together in different ways and have, again, I had help, right? The way Omega was telling the kids the previous episode, you needed to have help with the cavalry to kind of pull through.
Yep. Sorry. Rob says, I was crying when Scorch died. So sad. I don't know if he's being serious or not.
There goes the sequel for Scorch. Yeah.
Yeah, no, sorry, man. Sorry about that. I know that guy was kind of close. I got some beef with the
Omega Squad was better anyway.
Those guys.
Was he Delta Squad or Omega Squad? He was Delta Squad.
I think he was Delta, right?
Yeah, and Omega was the one that the books were based off of.
Yeah. I got questions around, like, okay, where the hell was everybody else in Delta Squad? Not that they had to be here, but if they brought one, I thought, okay, well, they're going to bring the others at some point to this series, and never happened. So, all right, that'll be in our loose ends kind of follow up episode. Quickly on the rest of my initial thoughts here. The final confrontation with Hemlock was super powerful, super emotional. I love the way they used, like, the lighting being on the bridge. The freaking animation was absolutely out of this world the entire time. And I just love how it got deathly quiet, no pun intended, when they were just popping off those shots on Hemlock after the binder had come off. There was nothing else going on. You could just hear it. And it was just Hunter just dead focused on taking him out. And I know I've seen some folks say they didn't like the way he went out. And I disagree. Like, how could you not want Hunter, of all people, to take those final shots and put him down after he just had, his daughter?
How else would they have done it?
I don't know. I mean, they probably had some other headcanon stuff, but I've seen some folks on there that have been talking about that. And Scorch as well. I've seen some folks say, like, they didn't like the way Scorch went down.
I could see that one.
I can see that too.
But with Hemlock, I was perfectly fine with how that went down.
Yeah, I loved it. Great way to end the season, like we said. Happily ever after. Nobody died. Rampart not being the good guy in the very end. I know I was on board. I said I liked the banter that was going on there, but at the end of the day, it turned out really he was truly about himself, only about himself, and that's what bit him in the end, right? Yeah. Thinking about himself, going out the way he did. Thought that was a beautiful death, a shocking death. I was not expecting. I think we called Nala Se, and we said either Nala Se or Emery dies, but not both of them. And that turned out to be the case. Right. I like the way that she went down because it was at Rampart's hands. He got to kill off the final Kaminoan that he didn't kill off. And she got to have the last word there with the thermal detonator, of course. Hemlock, just again, the competence and how an amazing of a character he was, and it lifted the Bad Batch in a lot of ways, right? Because he was so competent and he was so smart and ruthless. And he was gassing his own people, kind of thing, right? He was a real life villain. He wasn't kind of one of these superficial villains that they throw and you're never really worried about our protagonists. And that was definitely not the case here. To your point earlier, like, it did feel we were on pins and needles at times because you never knew what that guy was going to do. And he was so competent. He was so smart on top of things that was always posing a threat to the Bad Batch. So just hats off to the way everything went, even all the way up to the very end, and with, him handcuffing himself and making that kind of a security blanket for his own life, which, they found a way around. And then the last thing I'll just say quickly about and I've got a lot of other thoughts, of course, but at the very end, Omega, the idea that Omega was going to leave without telling anybody, right? She was trying to sneak out of there, but she wasn't going to get by from Hunter, right? Hunter's always going to keep an eye on her. He's always going to know where she's at. It's got that paternal instinct in him, on top of his other clone force and enhancements and abilities. He just knew where she was going to leave. But the idea that she was going to leave without telling all of them, because if she did, she knew they were going to probably try to talk her out of it. And this was something that she needed to do. That whole conversation at the end plays into the conversation they have right just before that about, hey, everybody gets to choose what they want to do now, kind of thing. So I love the way they bookend that, mirrored it back to back. But yeah, that's definitely an Omega move for her going at that age. So, okay. I guess that's what I had for my opening thoughts. Let's get into the breakdown. And I want to just get your thoughts on that. Again, we talked about just the tease that was happening throughout, but I mean, we start with the untraditional music, the non-traditional, fanfare, Bad Batch intro music, and they like grayed out that logo and made it like ominous. It was like Clone Wars, finale all over again.
Very funeral pyre type of look to it, right?
It was eerie. Yeah.
It was like Black Superman outfit.
And the music was like strings, right? And there's nothing creepier or scarier when they just have a lot of strings in in the
right.
music itself. But definitely ominous, and that stencil logo already kind of got me off on kind of a weird, scared vibe of where this was going to go.
Yeah, it picks up right from the last episode, right, and brings you right back into it that things are not going well. They're moving, but they're not necessarily going well, and things are not as you see. And then they give you that sense of doom, right, of something. This is serious, and that something is going to happen. Now they didn't quite deliver on some of that, but which is always a little bit frustrating. Like how much do you tease like that and not follow through to where it actually means something, which sometimes is a bit of a little bit of a frustration of mine. Like if you're going to tease something, I kind of expect you to pay it off in some way, but maybe that's cliche on its own. You could look at it either way.
Yep. So, of course, we open up with the guys. They're still making their way towards Mount Tantus. I think he said 5 clicks. I did the math. That comes out to 3 miles for those of us in the good old US of A. But yeah, they already started talking about, Wrecker's hurt. They're talking about he's already had one med pack. He's going to need another med pack. We've got Hemlock, who's kind of locking things down now, knowing that they're out there. He learns that Rampart's been captured, and that first confrontation is very interesting between them because he's almost trying to shame him for having sided with the clones, which I enjoyed because that's very imperialistic of them, right? To be kind of always trying to put each other down, one up each other, make each other feel like they're lesser kind of thing. That's all part of the Empire's plan kind of thing. But, he says a glaring weakness in the clones is their loyalty to one another is what he tells Hemlock, or Hemlock says that, right? And we get this kind of played back at the very end, right? He tells Omega that that's exactly, they were predictable in that way. And then they lock up Rampart. And, of course, next door is Nala Se. So any thoughts on the exchange between Rampart and Hemlock there?
It was good that we got a little bit of that because I think it helped establish that they are not on the same side and that there's no going back for Rampart back to the Empire. He doesn't have a home really anywhere. And so I think it informs where the character should be, where he's going, and that Hemlock just does not care about any of it. But Rampart's just throwing some of this back. You could tell he's still lost. He's still trying to put the pieces together, too, of not understanding why. He doesn't get that Omega is important. He doesn't understand why, which I kind of like where they took Rampart throughout this episode, where he actually has that moment of enlightenment, too. Of course, it's right at the very end, but I like that he thinks he knows it all, but he doesn't. He has to figure it out, and then he thinks he could parlay with that in some way. Mm-hmm. So I like what they did with Rampart in this one. And I think, again, we continue to see the consistency of Hemlock of being just a ruthless character. And then when Nala Se and Rampart share a glance, you can just tell the disdain he has for her, that he's locked up as the same as this Kaminoan,
right.
And they're both on the same level effectively.
Yeah. I mean, he's probably thinking too, like, I thought I did away with you guys. I certainly got framed for it. But I guess I didn't kill all of them. All right, we cut over to kind of the first exchange. I like that pairing of Echo and Emery. I already shipped them in my head. I've got a fanfic out there if you want to read it. But they were kind of working together throughout all of this, which I really enjoyed. I like the way they just paired those up. But Echo's saying, he can't find the vault, and she goes into the whole explanation about how it's super secret. Nobody knows where it's at. Later on, she even says, look, I didn't even know there were kids in here until just a few days ago, kind of thing. So I think that confirms some of the speculation that we had. And she says that, she was wrong and that she was trying to do the right thing. And I liked all that, but I just wish they would have hit that harder. Like, I know it sounds cliche, maybe on the nose, but I would have liked them to have worked in something about a callback to Nala Se's power line when she says, "You have the power," kind of thing. I wish they would have worked that back in there so that we could feel that, okay, Nala Se had an impact on her. That was, inspired her kind of thing, was the catalyst, the kindle or spark or whatever you want to call it. Right. But nonetheless, she did exactly what she had to, but I wish they would have kind of worked it in there somehow.
Well, and I think they kind of did a couple of different times for Emery, right? She has a lot to atone for. At the very end, she also talks about it. She has a lot to make up for. But I think you get the point, though. It does come across, though, that she has changed. She is trying to do the right thing. So I think for those that have paid attention and like those types of moments, I have a feeling it probably still made the connection. I'm with you. It probably could have been hit harder, but I know they're trying to keep this episode moving at the same time. But these were good moments, though. I mean, these are moments where Emery, you at least get to see Emery trying to make a difference and sharing everything she knows without any kind of filter. She's not holding anything back, which I think was really good for the character as well. Before we move on, though, did we talk about the actual exchange by the Bad Batch in the jungle, or is that coming up later? Like when Crosshair was trying to tell them to go back, and
it's coming up a little bit later.
Okay, I couldn't remember which the actual order came through. Okay.
Yeah, and it's because it's this whole beginning. It's like jumping back and forth, and they have like two lines, and they'll cut across, and it's one character, and then we get one line from them only, and then we cut back, and now we're sitting for 3 minutes. That's where I was talking about. It was just like go, 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 go. Yeah, but yeah, there's some good stuff in that dialogue. I would definitely want to touch on that. I was just thinking when you were talking there, I was listening, but I was thinking about the data pad. And that being symbolic of the power, because that was what really they were passing around, and that was what eventually got everybody in. They needed that in order for it to kind of pull a lot of this off. So maybe you could use that. I mean, I don't know. All right, loose thoughts there, but so we get back to Omega, and of course the kids are scared. Omega's got this whole plan involved. She's got it all planned out, and she says that line, "I've been trained for this," which I thought was cool because that kind of again reaffirms the fact that she's in her element. This is what she's been trained to do.
Right.
And the whole plan is they take out the medical droid, reprogram the medical droid, which is a very Bad Batch kind of thing to do. And then when Dr. Scalder comes in, the droid swings around, gives her a zap or whatever, stuns her, puts her out, and the kids take off and head into the ventilation shafts, to quote the Phantom Menace. But any thoughts around Omega's plan? I think it worked. I mean, it wasn't elaborate by any means, but it was simple enough and it was effective.
It was pretty convenient, but it worked out. And again, you have the kids learning to trust her and learning that things will work out, and how do they work as a team, right? And so the little codes, right? That I forgot the Pantoran girl's name, but knocking the chips and knocking them over. What was it?
Sammy.
Yeah, Sammy. There you go. Yeah, but the little indicators, right, to just give them a heads up on what's happening, that Scalder's getting close by, getting the team, getting this team to be familiar with how to talk to one another and how to move and how to trust and how to engage to inform one another. We're all really important. They're small things, but they all contribute, and they all feel like they've got a piece in it, and they all contributed. So I think it just continues to build that confidence that they know what they're doing, or that they trust Omega that knows she knows what she's doing, and that if they just have faith in her, that they'll survive this and they'll actually, get out of this place. So it was really nice to see. It was good to have. It was pretty straightforward. You don't have to think too hard about it, but
yeah,
it works.
That's a good point. Yeah, she was showing her leadership and training there because there was a lot of nonverbal communication, and the Bad Batch utilized that nonverbal communication throughout the whole series, really, on so many different missions. Right? She was just kind of passing that down.
There's a lot of nodding in the Bad Batch.
Yeah, a lot of confirmation nodding going on. Like, go ahead, take the shot. All right, we swing back over to Emery and Echo. They're heading over to the vault now. This is where Echo gets brought up on Project Necromancer for the first time, and most of the stuff we already kind of knew. Nothing really, I
love his response, though.
Yeah, I mean, she says Omega is vital to Hemlock's main objective for the Emperor. He's like, I don't like the sound of that. So yeah, that was it's. There's a part of me that thinks, like, wouldn't he have called Rex at that point? Like, holy crap, this is bigger now than we thought because of the Emperor kind of thing. But, maybe not.
Well, it's one of those loose ends of, like, how do they take this information and the program just didn't necessarily end from the Bad Batch's perspective. And what was Project Necromancer? What does Emery do with that knowledge about what they were trying to accomplish
Mm-hmm.
to make sure it doesn't happen in some other way, right? So just because this facility was destroyed doesn't mean the Emperor's desires or what he wants to move forward is changing at all, unless she didn't know the whole picture, though, either.
Yeah.
So unclear if she actually had 100% of the picture or if she was still only let into maybe 60% or 75%.
Yeah, I think that's probably the case. At least that's in my head. But yeah, let's add it to the list. I've got a whole. I think it's in a different set of show notes. But yeah, we'll add it to the list and come back.
We joked there's like a whole show of all.
There is a whole show.
Yeah,
I guarantee. Yeah, I don't know when we're going to squeeze that in, but there is a whole show here that we can do to talk about the loose ends and speculate on all that fun stuff. Okay, so then we get so they get out. The Omega spots the Zilla Beast. They've already kind of worked their ways to the walls. And Baron is like the hero here. Like they create this diversion. I mean, sure, that baby probably crapped its pants, and that's why it was starting to cry. But that was enough to get the attention of that stormtrooper, and was a good diversion for Omega to get down there and release the beast. Of course, it gets released. It was a great moment. Like, I love the Zillo Beast and the fact that it was like just terrorizing everybody at that point from here on out. They shoot it. It takes out the weapon that it was being tortured with, and it just starts wreaking havoc on everyone. It was a great little segment. I wish they would have stayed on that longer, but I get it. I mean, we had so much to do in the span of 50 minutes that, I'm happy with what we got.
Well, again, pretty violent. I mean, Zilla Beast just squashing and eating and whatever other stormtroopers, right? It got its due, as it went. But again, it was trying to get out. So I think it makes sense just to get it out. And you could also use this as a reason why the Empire maybe don't go back to Wayland as a planet, right? You got a wayward Zilla Beast, or maybe all the more reason to go back and try to collect it. But yeah, but again, it also didn't venture into some of the other possibilities that we had speculated were possible, with maybe Omega trying to get the kids to use the Force, unlock some of what she had learned from Gungi, those types of, or Ventress, anything like that. The cavalry was actually just clones, it was nothing else. So, but again, no Force use by the kids, so there wasn't something that was out of the norm or expectation of what they're capable of doing in this moment that maybe would pull some people out of that and say, well, now we're just going to use the Force to bail them out. The Bad Batch had to use everything at their disposal to be able to accomplish this mission, end to end. So I like that was the direction we went, and we didn't fall back on the Force and using special powers and things like that. I think it was really good to keep it grounded. Yeah,
I think I said as much as I love that idea, the simple and probably the most straightforward answer was just going to be that they all went out and released it, like manually released the Zilla Beast, which is what happened. So, that makes sense. Right. Well, let's talk about Hemlock. So he comes in, of course, he assesses what's going on. Now he's got a Zilla Beast that's lost. The Bad Batch are attacking. The kids are gone at this point, and he's blaming Skalder for all of this, right? Says it's all her incompetence and she's going to be dealt with. Well, I guess she got dealt with, maybe not. We'll see. But the Zilla Beast is still loose. We come back to that just really quickly. He orders that there's a unit that he sends out to try to contain it. Those guys all die a horrible death later down the road. Right. And then he tells Emery that, her fate is now intertwined with Omega's. So pretty much like, hey, if you don't get her back, you're dead kind of thing. Is basically a veiled threat, if you will. Orders her to go find Omega. And then we get that scene where I think this is where Echo and Echo says it was Omega that released the Zilla Beast because that's what he would have done. Right. Splitting them up and causing a diversion. So
and I was really worried that Echo was going to get found out right here too. I mean, because Echo was like right in the heart of all of these troopers with Scorch there, Hemlock, and I like how they gave Hemlock an out. I think this is where Tarkin calls, right? Mm-hmm. Was that right? So he's
I think it's a little bit later, but it's coming up.
He has to rush out, right? Something happened. I'm drawing a blank on what it was. But I was glad that didn't linger to where Echo starts looking like he's out of place, because Hemlock is very observant, as is Scorch and the others presumably. So it was good that they didn't linger enough so Echo's found out, because I was worried that this is an opportunity for Echo to get captured or something like that.
Yeah, I've got it later on, and I don't know that we'll talk about it enough, but Echo had a very interesting journey in this episode alone. Like, not only to your point there, right, where he was kind of in the midst of everything. I mean, he was in the belly of the whale the entire time, right, living there. But he had a really tough decision. Like, the mission changed for him at the very end. it was no longer about the Bad Batch, right? Omega had been secure and they were going after the Bad Batch, but he had to like pull a 180. And now it was like, well, I'm like 5 feet away from my brothers, the Bad Batch, and they're being carried off to God knows what's going to happen to them.
Right.
But he's so dedicated to what the mission at hand now, and the mission changed, and that was about the kids. That became the priority. He had to make that conscious decision of like, well, good luck to them. Hopefully I get to them at some point, but now I've got to go help with the kids there. But just being in those different awkward positions throughout the entire episode was amazing for him.
These last few episodes, I think, for Echo have just been fantastic. It was really good to see him get his due. And I think they really finished that character strong. And some of the things he was talking about and like organizing the clones and motivating the clones, like, you've fought way more than you've ever had to, and to ask you to do more of that is, not my wheelhouse. We'll talk about the speech, but it's, I like that Echo has just had these moments, and that he's able to finally have these moments to shine, both physically as well as intellectually, as well as how he's such a utility in the Bad Batch and how he is really part of the Bad Batch. He's always felt a little bit like an outsider. If you remember back to our conversations in season 1, I think.
Yeah.
We always felt like Echo was arguing with him. He always felt like a bit of an outsider, but now he does feel like an actual part of the team, the way that they've been playing off one another in the previous episodes, and then the way that they still look out for one another and team up and do kind of just fit together as well. And these episodes really helped Echo shine. So I was glad that we put an end cap on that one from where we started back in season 1.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. He did become kind of that missing link, or between the regs and the Bad Batch in a lot of ways. So, which
Right.
makes sense for him. Yeah. So we cut over to the Zilla Beast, and this is where it's rising out of the water. It starts crawling out, or it's already It's rising up ascending up the tower, the inner shaft, or whatever it was, up to the landing area. And all of that was, it was cool to watch. And then you realize later on that had to happen because we needed the debris and everything to be ripped apart for kind of that big dramatic moment when the Bad Batch finally give in.
Right.
So all that makes sense. It eventually makes its way out, and then we get to see it kind of roaming around saying, I'm free, kind of thing, as it's, galloping through the jungle.
Gallivanting through the jungle.
Gallivanting through the jungle as Zilla beasts do. And this is now we're at where Crosshair tells Hunter and Wrecker, he tells them to call. This is that conversation you were talking about. So he's like, hey, I know what's going on here. I know what's on the inside. You guys go call Rex. I'm going to do this kind of thing on my own because Wrecker's hurt. And, Crosshair puts it all on himself. And this is where Wrecker says, we've handled worse situations than this. And I love Crosshair's line. He says, wake up, Wrecker. Clone Force 99 died with Tech. We're not the same squad anymore.
And that hit hard when he said
it hits
that.
hard, but he's not wrong either.
Right.
But he's not right. He's not right either. Right. He stayed in the obvious, I guess. But you and I joke a lot about team development because we talk about it in our own professional lives. And yeah, that's exactly what happens. Right. That group that was there, they are no longer there, but they are a new group now. And that was the point that I think Wrecker and Hunter were trying to make is like, yeah, maybe Tech's not here. Maybe we can't do all the things like we used to, and we shouldn't do all the things that we used to, but we still are a team and we still can't separate because we're stronger together, kind of thing. And that was the message they relayed. But on top of that, I just want to say, I want your thoughts on Crosshair's last line, because Omega needs you both. So I'm doing this alone. It's what I deserve. That hit hard for me too, because I was like, holy crap, he's really feeling like this is, his fate, and his fate is probably to sacrifice himself, to take one for the team so that Omega can be rescued and maybe the clones can be rescued as well. But he was doing this for Omega.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And we see this a little bit of that common trend. Emery has some similar thoughts. I think even Nala Say to an extent as well, with saying, look, I've got to pay for my sins. Like what I have done is beyond forgiveness. And this is the one way I can go and maybe alleviate some semblance of my shame and allow some of that to go. But I think it goes back to what Omega has been trying to tell these guys for a long time. It's about family. It's not just about your team or your squad. Those are important aspects of it, but this is about family, and that the family doesn't give up on one another, and that they continue to, they pick each other up, even in the most impossible situations. You are better together than apart. Right. And they've been saying this throughout the entire series, right? So for them to come up and say that, and we had talked a little bit about last episode, whether or not, there's still some moments where it doesn't feel like Crosshair is necessarily part of the team. We see that here, right? We see that he's putting that distance between them because of his past and because of that shame. And the rest of the team is just, that's what I love about this. Like Wrecker's the one standing up saying, look, like, no, this is who we are. This is what we do. We are going to do this together. And I really love how they did the animation here with they focus back on Crosshair's hand, right? Because you see the tremors
Yeah,
as
the
soon as he
tremor.
starts getting back and knows what he's got to do. Man, he has an immediate like PTSD moment where he just starts trembling pretty fiercely. And so I like that we were able to see that, and he's still willing to try to go do what needs to be done, even though he knows that it's the last thing on the planet that he actually wants to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we get the funny line too. We cut over at this point, and this is where the Zilbeast now is walking away, and they hear at least they hear the roar, I think, at this point. And Crosshair says Echo's handiwork or Omega's. And I think Steph pointed out here in unison, they say Omega's.
That was funny.
It was a great little moment there. So they know her pretty well. Okay, so the kids are scared, of course. They're making their way up the ladder all the way to the very top, or they're about to. And that whole little bit there with her saying, or Jack saying that he's afraid of heights, and awesome that she called back to Wrecker, right, and saying that he's like our strongest warrior and he's scared, kind of thing. Just pacifying the kids, building them up, giving them the courage they need to kind of follow through. Very leadership, another leadership quality of her on display there.
And another, it's like a way of thinking for missions, right? Always think forward. Always think about the next foot in front of you. Don't think about the one you just left behind, right? So just keep looking forward. Don't look back.
Yeah, she says, just stay focused on what's ahead and not what's below.
Right.
And quite literally, in that regard.
Don't look back, Anakin. Don't look back.
So Scorch comes and provides an update to Hemlock. He tells her that the Zilbeast is out. Hemlock orders 2 units now, and then he points out that we've got a weakness here, right? And again, this is like the Scorch is another competent kind of character throughout all of this, just given his background, his experience as a clone trooper. He says that that there's no air support, that they're starting to get divided, and Hemlock orders it anyway. He's like, just go through with it. So I think it probably pays off for Hemlock in the end, but it was just nice to see that someone was, speaking up about like, hey, this is probably not the way to go, kind of thing.
Right.
This is where Hemlock then heads up and he goes and unveils CX2 along with these 3 new operatives. And I guess this is, he'd been talking about brewing or creating these new ones for a while there. We finally got to see them. CX2 looks like he may have got a couple of upgrades. I don't know. It's really ambiguous, but I do like this idea that there was, like you said, there was 3 of them. They kind of had unique qualities. Some of that was partially just for visually for us to keep track of who the hell was who, because
absolutely.
Even during that fight, especially at the very end with the gas and all that, I did my darndest to keep notes and see, like, I had paused it, going back. Okay, this is the spear operative. This is the bladed operative. And I cannot keep track of, like, it felt like there was 10 operatives at any given moment. But nonetheless, the point of that is the idea that there was 4 now total, and they all had kind of unique abilities, or at least unique weapons, and seemed like they were a little bit more improved than the last version. All of that screams like Phase Trooper stuff to me again, which I just kind of really enjoyed and appreciated.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think these are definitely a precursor to the Dark Troopers that we get many years later. I do have a question for you, though. So when they were behind I think it was probably CX2, before the helmet came down, did you have a moment of like, oh crap, it is Tech?
No,
because it was a bit of an angular head. It was in the shadow. You didn't have any moment of doubt.
No, I've been pretty steadfast. I refuse to believe it, but
no, I know you refuse to believe it, but did you, like, I've been that way too. Like, I've been adamant that this is not Tech. Tech is dead. They wouldn't do this to us. They wouldn't throw this all on its head. But that moment when they had it behind and they showed him without the helmet, and then they were going to put the helmet on, I was like, oh gosh, they actually did this.
Oh, no. I see what you're saying, but no, it never crossed my mind. The closest I got was at the very end when one of them fell down and like his helmet came off. I was like looking to see who it was, but even then it wasn't like, is that Crosshair or is that Tech? It was more like, who the hell is that? Like, other than him. But
and they don't even sound like clones, which is weird. Like without their helmet, they sound like clones, but then with the helmet on, they don't sound anything like clones.
Yeah, it might have been just D. Bradley Baker trying to provide variation to it.
Did he voice the operators?
I think so, because they're not specifically listed, and he's just listed as all the clones, so I just assumed he was.
Oh, okay.
But I could be wrong. So where are we here in the notes? All right, so he's unveiling these new, and there's a black kind of, I think one's got just no color in them, but one's got like a blue little signal or logo. That's the spear wielding one. We've got one with the red one that's got the yellow blades, and then you got the green one who has like the big sniper rifle that gets used at the very end of the episode. And then this is where Crosshair and them they're just getting kind of. I mean, there's too many people. They need to fall back. Wrecker's hurt. Hunter's really shaky, and he orders them all to leave, and he'll kind of cover for them. And there's a lot of great moments here. Like Crosshair just goes off. I mean, there's a lot of confirmed kills for him left and right. Didn't seem like he missed much at all when the moment counted, which I thought was great. Right. This is where he also shoots that little sticky grenade. It connects to the framework, which that blows up, and that that was left over from the Zillo Beast. That detonates. That massive sheet of metal comes down on a bunch of stormtroopers that are attacking him. And then this is where they go down. So before we get into that, is there anything you want to say? There's a lot that goes on here, and I'll just touch on it. But anything specific about this the battle where they finally they lose, I guess, for the first time in a while?
No, I don't think anything in particular stood out.
Yeah, so the gunship coming across, strafing, great. I mean, they needed that.
That was cool seeing Crosshair take it out.
And then Crosshair shooting the pilot, which is awesome. Of course, that Hunter passes out at that point because of the explosion. There's more metal that's coming down on him. This is where Wrecker, gets wrapped up with those electrobolas that get thrown at him from one of the operatives. Crosshair has that nice moment where he shoots and the shield with the sticky bomb, that thing blows up. Of course, doesn't kill him, but it certainly put him on his heels there. And then there's the spear where I guess, I forget who it was that gets kicked by the spear guy, a spear wielding operative. But this is where that it finally gets shoved into his exposed armor. And this is where I was like, oh my God, this is it. He's not going to make it. This is where he's going to go. He's going to go down. Then this is where Crosshair reaches for his blaster. And I was like, oh, great. He's going to save him. Then that foot came down and I was not expecting. I mean, you brought it up as one of the highlights or one of your initial moments or thoughts, but yeah, I wasn't expecting that anybody would, get hurt outside of dying, I guess. But I had considered him safe. I will say this, when his hand got cut off, I thought, okay, well, now he's definitely safe, because why would you cut off his hand and then kill him? It's like, that's just, way too excessive for anyone to go through at that point. But the idea that you've now taken the hand of someone who uses, I mean, it was his shooting hand too. I mean, the quote was, you should be more careful with your shooting hand. I was like, oh my gosh. So what has he got now left? That all plays just so much more dramatically in the end when he takes that final shot, shooting with his non-shooting hand on top of everything else that he's been going through, and making that shot makes it all that much more priceless.
Because that's his steady hand now anyway. So
he has no choice, I guess. Just puts the nub up there and makes it steady. But anything you want to touch on there during the sequence?
Well, I mean, you just really felt how outmatched the Bad Batch were. I mean, they're already really worse for wear, and they're just not up to snuff against these new, the new additions, if you will. And so it was like very ominous. You really felt like the momentum was not in our favor, and like this is where you truly felt like, okay, we're going to lose someone, because I mean, you just had so many opportunities. Like you said, Wrecker is on the verge of, like, it seems like he's about to get stabbed. And then you have Crosshair, he's pinned, and you could either say, okay, he's either going to get killed, and then they just took his hand, which is still pretty extreme. So it's just, things are not going well. And then when they, later on, when, like you already mentioned before, like when they wheel him past Echo, you're just like, man, what's next for these guys? Like, what else can you do to them? So they did a really good job of making sure that we had really broke down the team really far to where it feels like, okay, there's like, how are we going to get our ways out of this one, right?
Yeah.
And it all comes back down to Echo, which was really cool.
Yep. And speaking of Echo, we get the next sequence is the kids getting up to the very top. They make their way all the way up to the top of the ladder there. And this is where Emery and Echo see Wrecker, Crosshair, and Hunter being dragged away to God knows what. We talked about that tough choice he has to make. And he says they're going to head for the science hangar to go after the kids. We cut back over to the kids, and they're approached by 3 stormtroopers, one of which is Echo, thankfully. That surprised me. He takes out the 2 stormtroopers, stuns them. And I love the fact that he called her Havoc 5, right? Like, talk about some street cred to the kids behind her. Like, yeah, buddy, I got my call name, right? They don't call me Omega. And then also hearing the kids saying, you're helping us, Dr. Carr? Like, they were just, you could see it in their faces, like, thank God. Like, they already saw her as the nice one, and just, I don't know. It was a nice little cute moment for them to see that somebody they knew and thought was good turned out to actually be good.
And it was a little bit of a missed moment, I think, between Emery and Omega at times. I think we get a little bit at the shuttle, but it would have been nice to have a little bit more of an exchange between the two of them as sisters, but
Yeah.
it never really panned out. I think that's kind of a bit of a theme throughout the episode, right? Is like or maybe even through the season, is you get kind of about 75, 80, 85% of the way, but there's just that little something extra that we wish we would have had that just would have like been, yes, like we really pulled it all the way to the, like max capacity type of thing and really pulled us to the edge with them. But, it would have been nice for them to have some sort of small exchange there, but we didn't have it. We did get one with Omega and Nala Se though, which was nice. So
yeah,
at least
when Omega,
briefly.
when Omega's on the giving side of it, it's definitely there in spades, right? But it's everybody else that's
And it
just
makes
can't
sense,
commit.
right? And it makes sense. I mean, Emery is
Yeah,
not
right.
the most open and expressive person, so I'm not unreasonable in any of this stuff. But it would have
Yeah.
been nice to, again, we saw a lot of walls breaking down, and it's a process. But just to have a small moment there, and like I said, Emery does have two occasions in this to where she does admit to where she's done things wrong. She wants to try to make them right. So I'm satisfied with that. But we want to be a little more than satisfied sometimes.
Yeah. So they run off. Echo and Emery run off with the kids. Echo tells Emery to take the kids to Pabu, although she doesn't know. He says, take these, go to these coordinates kind of thing. And then I love that Omega stays behind. Like, this is my mission, right? I'm not a kid anymore. I have to stay with this. And Echo sees her as that. Like, she's a vital part of the success for this mission.
I think that's exactly it. Like Echo didn't even think twice about it. He's like, she and I, we have a job to do.
Yep.
And you just
Yep.
felt that right away, like part of the team. We're going to do it, no question. I like that about Echo. He's very just, yep, let's do it.
Yeah. They have a nice little moment there where the kids kind of all wrap their arms around Omega, except for Bayron, who's doing the C-3PO on the back of
But
Chewbacca.
he gets a head ruffle.
Yeah, right. But he's just kind of like, what's going on? I can't see anything. I'm facing the wrong way, kind of thing.
I had to put it in the thumbnail. Like I could not put that moment.
Did you put that in there? I didn't even see it.
Yeah, on the main YouTube
Oh,
thumbnail.
that's right.
You'll see
Yep.
it down at the bottom there.
Yeah.
I just couldn't not put that in there because it was such a sweet moment, right? Of
Yeah.
These kids, like this is the person who literally gave them their lives back, even though they don't know what the future might bring or how long it'll take. They have hope again, and so it was really sweet.
But you're right. He did get a little head scratch. So, yeah, that was nice of him. And then, of course, they run off literally again right back into the belly of the whale. And he says, let's complete the mission, which is very Echo and on brand for him. Okay, then we get to some very uncomfortable scenes where we've got Hunter and Crosshair and Wrecker being tortured, essentially. I mean, they're being preconditioned for being altered again. And Hemlock says as much a little bit later about how he's improved I think Crosshair was resistant and he wasn't able to do it. We always kind of chalk that up to the fact that he was not a reg and he was a Bad Batch. And so genetically, there was something more that had to happen there. But I take him for his word that he probably did figure out a way. And you consider the Bad Batch as being, operatives. That would have been a pretty formidable kind of, characters. So thankfully that didn't happen. But yeah, the torturing here, was pretty uncomfortable to watch at times. But
Yeah, it was something where you really could almost dread what Hemlock would use the Bad Batch for if he was able to condition them. And of course, you have Defiant till the end, right? With Hunter saying, you'll never kill us, you'll never break us, type of thing. But when you look over at Crosshair and Wrecker, who are out like a light, I mean, you're not feeling all that confident.
No.
Wrecker's not doing too hot either, right? So
yeah,
you have to really wonder, but you have that confidence from Hemlock, and also he's just banking he knows the Bad Batch so well. He knows what's going to happen. He calls him out on loyalty here in just a minute too, and he just knows all the things. But to have them in his hip pocket would be quite on the river draw for anything that he wants to do in the future, if or when he's able to actually accomplish this time. Do you think he would be able to turn them? I imagine he wouldn't expend the time and the resources if he didn't think it was possible. But
yeah, I think he did. At least that's how I took the scene, interpreted it, because that adds to the stakes even more. I don't think he would have been bluffing in doing that. If he was bluffing, then all he was just doing is torturing them, right? Just to hurt them, kind of thing.
Did you think there was any moment where one of them would actually briefly turn in this episode, or do you just no, this is a 51-minute episode. There's no way they're going.
There's no way. And I like the Hunter's line. I think you mentioned it, but the exact line was, "We'll survive, but you won't."
Yeah.
I figured, okay, well then it's not gonna happen. And of course he gets interrupted by the C-3PO of the Empire. No, I'm kidding. It's Tarkin who calls him. I think Scorch or whoever comes by and tells him, "Hey, Tarkin's on the phone," kind of thing.
Right.
And then we go back over to Omega and Echo, and this is where they're kind of making their way. They're taking out stormtroopers here left and right, picking up blasters along the way, and they finally make their way to the prison or the brig. And we get to see Nala Se. Of course, we see Rampart, all the clones. I mean, this is, I don't know. What's your thoughts? Like this is not. It's the Bad Batch. It's not the Clone Wars. I get that. I think we were envisioning that there would be some like big liberation with Rex coming in and saving the day, and we'd have clone troopers all over the place. Didn't really turn out to be the case, and this was the big breakout that I think we had always envisioned and wanted. Maybe not to the flair that I think that we were talking about, but what did you think about it? I mean, it was essentially effective. A lot of them did die, I think, too, but a lot of them made it out based on the final scenes when we get back to Pabu.
Yeah, it wasn't the cavalry we expected to show up, but it's the cavalry they had. So it made sense, I think, that they would kind of rally the troops that were there, and that the troopers actually wanted to fight for themselves. I mean, it was a really kind of watershed moment for them in many ways, to kind of use your lingo here. I'm stealing your words, but those are the things that I think was really important for the clones to do. And again, someone is coming back and rescuing them. They think they don't leave their brothers behind, right? I think this was something throughout the entire season, right? That Omega's trying to get through Crosshair's head, and Crosshair doesn't give a rat's anything about the other clones and whatever. But now, like, here they are, and so that their brothers are here. Like, of course, I'm going to go and give you my life. I've got one last fight for this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to fight for myself, and I'm going to fight for my brothers, even though I've been fighting for my brothers for years. This feels different. This feels special, and we have something. And I've got these two strangers. They don't appear to know either one of them, Omega or Echo, but yet they're on board to do it. So I think it worked really well. Was it as maybe exciting as a Rex showing up, and maybe others that we have names, right? Like a Hauser and some others that have been built up throughout the seasons? No, I don't think it had that same impact, but I think it made a lot more sense to do it this way. And it's more of an insurrection than an all-out assault on Tantus. And then you have to explain how they got there. That's actually what I thought when Echo was giving her the card with the coordinates to Emery.
Oh,
I thought
people.
I thought it was going to be like, my first instinct wasn't Pabu, it was Rex.
Oh.
Like, to contact Rex and have him meet up and get to a safe place, and then Rex would bring the cavalry.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where I thought some of that was going. So it was a nice turn there, and they had to rely on themselves. That the Bad Batch had to influence everybody, not people rescuing the Bad Batch.
Yeah.
So I liked that part of how how that turned out.
And I'm happy with it. Don't get me wrong. Like, the idea, like, again, that's where, we have said on this show ourselves, and it was said before from the hosts before us, that headcanon is a bitch. And the reality is, you got to be able to, you can talk about this stuff and you can enjoy talking about this stuff, but when it doesn't happen, you got to let it go, right? You have to let it go. You have to shed that. And so this is one of those moments where in my head, I had this grand vision of everybody coming in and this huge kind of rescue, and we didn't get that. It was a much more, I don't know, pared down maybe is not, I don't know if that's the right word, but the fact that it's Echo delivering it, and he does have a speech. I mean, he says, listen, I know you all have been through enough. You deserve your freedom, but Omega and I can't do this alone. Is anyone willing to stand with us? And of course, we get a dramatic moment where everybody starts to, I will, they all start kind of coming forward. It didn't play out as cliche as we've seen in so many other things. It wasn't the Braveheart speech. It wasn't Aragorn's speech, but it was Echo's speech. It was the best speech that Echo could deliver, that you would expect him to deliver. And it was effective. It resonated with the clones because thematically, it was about them caring for each other. And this was a moment where they had one more fight in them to care for everybody that's left. I mean, the one guy even says, I've got one more fight left in me, kind of thing.
Well, and they were given the choice, right?
Yeah,
They were able to make their own choice of what they wanted to do, and there would be no hard feelings. There would be no ill will against them. You've earned your choice now. What are you going to do with it? How do you want to do it? So that, like, when you talk about like summarizing, we talked on Discord, I think Utini had said this was the Bad Batch felt like an epilogue to the Clone Wars. And I think that was a very fitting statement, because I was like, man, I feel that way in a lot of ways. And I think this moment was very much those last few seasons of Clone Wars, where you start to have those questions really pop up a lot more. This moment right there is that vindication, and that moment, that threshold of where we finally had a say-so in what we wanted to do and how we wanted to approach our future. This is our first true moment of being able to do that in a broader sense. So I think it was a great way of wrapping up many seasons of the Clone Wars and some of those struggles and challenges that they had, and of course with all the chips and everything else, just on top of it. But
Yeah.
it was such a great comment by Atini. I want to call that out.
Yeah, no, that is a great comment because he's spot on as usual as that guy is.
It's very perspective. Yeah.
Rob says Tantus is now in play for some kind of future storyline. Love to see that. Yeah, and by the way, at the very end, he doesn't say it's done. He just says it's shuttered, meaning we're putting it on hold, going on ice for a little while. So
Right.
that doesn't change anything canonically. It doesn't mess up anything that we're expecting.
Yeah, but usually when the Empire leaves, they're outie.
Yeah. I mean, what's left in there, though? You know what I mean? Like, it's probably used for something else, but
Right.
all the cloning stuff in Project Necromancer, definitely, at least what was there, is no longer of value. And One Up versus CPU says, I bet the Empire is really kicking themselves for not having offsite backups on Project Necromancer. Man,
I was going to ask you about this. I was like, the tech manager and you, like, where are your backups? Like, how do you not have a duplicate and triplicate backup? What's your disaster recovery? Like, what's all the things, right?
Don't even get me started. This is right in my wheelhouse professionally with, like, BCDR and data centers and like, have you ever heard of? I guess they don't have Iron Mountain, at least in Star Wars land or whatever. But yeah, you don't put all your eggs in one basket, kind of thing. But it makes for great storytelling, dramatic storytelling. So
yeah, their business continuity plan needs a little bit of work.
There's no IT manager there in Star Wars, I guess, or in the Death Star.
Well,
everybody's an IT.
There's
person.
no OSHA either, so
yeah, there's no.
It
OSHA.
makes sense. Yeah,
we've proven that time and time again. Okay, before so they're about to run off, and then Nala Se tells Omega that she has to stop Hemlock. She says that basically I'm going to destroy all of my work and research, so no one will have it. And she tells Omega to go with them. Your place is with them. And this is where, okay, I thought there would be more here, but it was I wouldn't say necessarily it was cold, but there wasn't any kind of lingering feelings from Nala Se like I thought there would be. I thought they would have like a hug or an embrace or something before they left, but they didn't. She just said, hey, you need to be with them. I'm going to go on my mission, do your thing, you do your thing. They kind of went off, and that was the end of it. She did hand her the data pad, though, right? Which is,
that's
again,
basically like handing someone a Valentine's Day card in Kaminoan. So
yeah. The same kind of thing.
I mean, this goes back to my comment before, though, right? We get about 85, 90% there, but it's like, well, that little something extra would have been great. But would that have been in character for Nala Se?
I think no. Nala Se initiating no.
But would it have been a moment of character growth and being open to something that's out of character for herself? Would have been a really great opportunity, I think.
I think so, and I think it would have been. I think it would have been in character for Omega to say before she left, Nala Se, thank you so much for everything you did. Thank you for saving my life and giving me the opportunity to be with them, or whatever, something, right? Yeah. Acknowledging that very what was that, episode 1 or 2, whatever it was, when she let her go, right? We know it was her now behind it all, and she was behind the bounty hunter, right, and trying to get her back, kind of thing, right, too. So, there's just moments there where I wish she would have acknowledged it, and I could see it coming from Omega, but from Nala Se, no, probably not. That's just not what they do.
But still, it was good, though, that she acknowledged that your place is with them.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's not with me. It's not with anybody else. Let go of this, whatever's left of her and Nala Se, and go with your family, right? These are your brothers. These are the people that will take care of you, and you take care of them. So, and this is kind of the last right of the Kaminoans, right? She's the last. She's not technically the last one. There is a senator or a former senator that's still alive, but she's one of the last. And of course, from a research perspective and the science perspective of it, this is the end of the Kaminoan line. So again, something we had forecasted this series would be the true end of the Kaminoans, especially with the season 2 finale, or the season 1 finale.
Yeah.
We felt like this was going to happen at some point, and then this one did pay off, and that she would be the final one.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
from a closing perspective, at least.
Yeah, right. Because I at least we don't know for sure, but at this point, I would say yes. That line of Kaminoans and this level of expertise and knowledge around cloning is lost. Because otherwise, if it's still out there, Palpatine finds it and he's able to successfully clone something. And we know that's not the case. He has, he gets them from Wish or wherever the hell he gets his people from in the future, but they can't get it together because they keep cranking out Snokes and all the stuff that we see in Mandalorian. So I think, yeah, you're right. This is probably the last one. They're still out there, but not doing what she does.
Do you think that loses casual fans at all? Or do you think that's because that's you have to be
lost on casual fans?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I mean, you just feel like you have to be a little bit steeped in to get that inference or that, to be able to infer all of that stuff in between. Or Do you think if you watch the series, you probably got that if you remember back that far?
That's a good question. They've not. It's probably lost on, I guess, the average viewer because they really haven't explicitly come out and tied these two together. We're tying it together because all the pieces are there, but we're so in the weeds with all this stuff, and we talk about it and digest it and dissect
It's
it.
been 2 years since we blew up Camino, right?
Yeah,
or,
that's
or
true.
Tapoca City. So
Yeah. And of course, let's not forget Rampart decides to follow Nala Se at the end of that. So I thought, what is he doing?
looking all sinister.
Yeah, back to his sinister ways. Tarkin calls, and he's got a lot of questions. He actually only has one question, but they tell him, hey, the Zillo Beast is out. He don't care. Facility's under threat. Nah, I don't really care. He just really wants to know, what's going, he mentions that the Emperor is very concerned. And he was really only concerned about one thing, which he confirms later down the road, which is like, where the hell's the research and what's the status of that kind of thing.
So do you think, did you get an indication here that Tarkin finally knew what was going on? He seemed a little more informed of what was going on at Tantus, like in this episode, or do you think it's just Tarkin being as,
yeah,
whatever?
They didn't really give us because he says Project Necromancer at the very end. And we talked about how he likely didn't really know the specifics, and this was probably being all done, under his, or, behind his back kind of thing.
Right.
But you're right. He does show up and he asks about it. But I think he may have been, not to jump ahead, but, he may have been at the point where, I don't know what's going on here, but I want to further my advancement. I want to make Grand Moff. And so this is an opportunity to put this to bed, take that money, pour it into Project Stardust, and that will really get my name out there kind of thing. I mean, it was all kind of, self-indulging in that way, but I don't know that he had any specific details around Project Necromancer. I don't know if they give us anything that really made me think, oh, yeah, he's in the know.
It's like if you catch wind of like a coded project or a secret project at work and you just want to name drop it just so you feel important.
Yeah.
It kind of felt a little bit about that. Yeah, Project Necromancer. He knows what he's talking about, but he has no idea what's actually behind it.
Yeah.
Or at least no concrete evidence of what's behind it.
The big takeaway is he says he's on his way. And I thought, oh boy, here we go. Yeah, he shows up.
And that was even more curious. It's like he knows where it's at, is going to show up, and he's just going to make a house call.
Yep. So Omega is now, she heads into the walls. And her whole mission now is to kind of scout ahead into the training room to see, this current status of where everybody's at. Meanwhile, everybody's left behind. She gets in there. She sees that Rampart is, we go to the medical bay now. Sorry. And this is where Nala Se walks in. Rampart's very close behind her. At some point, she picks up a thermal detonator. He picks up a blaster from falling troopers along the way. And, she turns everything on. She starts turning up or lifting the database. Why it goes down, I don't know, but it's dramatic. But the database comes up, and this is Rampart holds her at gunpoint. And he wants to know what's so valuable about Omega to the Emperor.
Right.
And then he starts punching stuff in. He says, tell me everything you know about Project Necromancer. We cut away from that. We'll come back to that in just a little bit. And Omega now sees where everybody's at. She can see that, they're all kind of in, lockdown basically in these tubes or what were they called? I forget now. Anyways, wherever the Bad Batch are.
Yeah,
but she tells Echo.
Reinforced. They didn't call them a catacomb. I forgot what they called them. Shoot.
They had a name, and I don't remember if it was I don't think they ever said it, but I think it was in the audio description.
It was in the audio description, right?
Yeah. All right. It's fine. Had we had more time to put show notes together, the other, so she basically says, I need a distraction. Right. And this is where they kind of rush in. I was all in for this. I love this idea that the clones were coming in to help free them, since they were regs freeing the Bad Batch. Right. What a role reversal there.
It was curious when they called it a training room. I didn't see it. And all of a sudden when they started moving it up and down and the pillars started to climb, I was like, oh, this really is a training room. Like, this seems like a research facility or a conditioning place, basically like a medical type of center at the top, not a training facility around it.
Yeah, it almost like it was a training facility that had been repurposed for the equipment up on the top. It looks like they raised up the middle of it, and they were using that to be the area that did all the experiments or the conditioning. And of course, so that's enough distraction for Omega to get down there. She starts undoing the bindings for everybody. Of course, they're still kind of all passed out. And then we get the battle going down below, which is really great. I loved all of it. I mean, there's that one clone who took that blade in the back as he fell back to he got kicked or whatever, pushed, and suddenly that blade comes through him. Or
maybe that was in the wall.
Yeah, it was through the wall. That's what it was. Somebody pierced him.
I was like, holy smokes, that was intense.
Yep, great stuff there. We love death and all that dismemberment. Wrecker starts to stir a little bit, and this is where Omega finally gets the attention of one of the operatives, and she takes 2 shots off, but they're stun shots, and of course they don't do anything to this guy, which I thought was okay. Well, that's probably not enough. And this was, I just wondered too at some point, because she had a blaster and she's now in the midst of a grown-up fight, if you will. I wondered if they were going to play with this idea of her having to make a decision about killing somebody for the first time. Now that would have been pretty dark considering how young she is. But that just kind of proves that, they couldn't do that. She probably wouldn't do that. And so she would fall back on stunning, which wasn't going to be enough. And of course, put her in the position that she was in.
She started to fiddle with the switch though, to turn it to kill.
Did she really?
Yeah. You could tell her right before he grabbed it, you could tell she was trying to change it, but it didn't work.
That's cool. I like the idea that she had it in her to do it. At least. Let's see. Hemlock and CX2 walk in. And this is where he tells Omega, call back to earlier, a glaring weakness in the clones is their loyalty to one another. Thank you for proving my point. And then he gasses everybody down below, which, again, I thought was like, yep, that's the right thing to do. It sucks. But, he's thorough and he's, again, competent. And of course, the clones are covering their mouths and they're starting to cough. I couldn't tell, if that gas, some of them walked away at the end of it. And I suspect a lot of them did. So it didn't look like it was necessarily like an instant death kind of thing, but it was enough to at least put them down either unconsciously or from, lack of air kind of thing.
Yeah, it's the same gas that they used on Crosshair back in season 1?
Oh, was it?
Yeah. So
okay.
It was the same one that, Hemlock said, yeah, I breathed this stuff in. I've got an immunity to it.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
so it was definitely kind of a knockout gas, or at least some sort of nerve gas that knocks him out for a time. Although one stormtrooper or one clone trooper or clone rather seemed like he was groggy but still up and around. And I guess stormtrooper armor that Echo was wearing had good filtration, so he didn't seem affected by it at all.
Yeah, it didn't bother him. Conveniently enough. All right, we go back to Rampart, and this is where he's now fascinated with this whole Project Necromancer thing, and he talks about he's going to use the research and everything here, all the data that's there as kind of leverage. It's a bargaining chip for him to get pretty much anything he wants, and at least in his own mind, from the Empire. I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's reinstatement or if it's, I want to go retire on some planet somewhere.
He's money in retirement. He's an idiot.
He's an idiot. Yeah, it's like, your own people. Why would you even think this is going to be an option? I
kind of went back and forth about, yes, this is who Rampart is, and like how much of an idiot it is this. I didn't want to call it like lazy writing or anything like that extreme, but it was just like, does it fit the bill, right? Did it make sense for it to go this route? And I kind of went back and forth a little bit on this one about how I felt. I was like, you know what? Rampart's desperate.
Yes.
Rampart is just wanting out. He's just looking out for himself. So I'm like, okay, these things all match, and he's making really stupid decisions that there's no way you're going to blackmail the Empire. Because when you blackmail the Empire, they might pay you, but hey, did we ever see Sid come back? Just saying. I mean,
he's on my list of what happened to, but yeah.
Yeah, of loose ends and loose tails, I guess. But it's just, but again, he's desperate, and that's what he wants. He just wants to look at himself, so he starts to just think in very small terms rather than looking at the bigger picture, like he did when he was in the Empire, oddly enough. So that he's kind of getting screwed by himself, and that one's pretty fitting, I think. So I chopped it up. That was what I was going back and forth with. Did you have anything like that too?
No, I'm with you. I'm on point with you there. I feel like he was making bad decisions that he normally wouldn't have made, or at least wasn't thinking clearly or straight, given the circumstances. I mean, they're in Tantus. He didn't want to be there in the first place. Thought it was suicidal for him to be there. And on top of that, right, he's under duress, trying to figure out like, how the hell am I going to get out of this? And that was really the only card he felt he could play. It wasn't the most logical thing. He probably wasn't thinking straight. A better Rampart would have, made a different decision. But it is what it is, kind of thing. He also says,
I don't know if they would have hunted him if he got out and like escaped. Like, does the Empire even care about Rampart at this point? I don't think Hemlock did at the very least.
I don't know. I mean, it seems like enough time has passed where like that whole Kaminoan incident, like nobody cares about anymore.
Right.
So probably not.
Yeah.
It's been a while. Like you said,
I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
A couple years. No, it's a good question. He says that, or Nala Se says that the data and the research will always be Kaminoan, and he says not any longer, almost as a threat, and that's when he shoots her. Wasn't expecting her death to be. I wasn't expecting her to be shot, but I was like, okay, well, that makes sense. But then, of course, what we talked about in my opening thoughts, I love that the fact that she, had set the thermal detonator. It goes off, and man, like I paused it right on his eyeballs right before the explosion. He has a look of, you know what?
And you kind of hear it. You kind of hear him start to say something too, and it was like, oh man, he knows how bad he messed up.
And the sound was awesome too, because you get the explosion initially for like the half second inside, and then it cuts and pulls away, and you can hear it like almost like imploding inside there, like it's so self-contained and muffled. Great stuff audibly there. Let's see.
Were you sad when Nala Se died? Like, did it affect you in any kind of way? Besides being a little surprised that he just shot her point blank, but was there any emotional attachment to Nala Se at all at this point?
I think there might have been, but I kind of got over it after like the last season.
Yeah.
I mean, I was really vested in her, like after season 1, especially what she did, maybe season 2, knowing that she was on Tantus now, but we really didn't see her much at all this season. So yeah, not really, but yeah. I do more for Omega than anything else. Like I said, I really kind of wanted that relationship to be there, and it never really happened. So
I think that's where I stand on that one too. It was sad because she was trying to do what was right for Omega, but at the same time, I think they kind of said what they needed to say, even if it wasn't as emotional as maybe we always want.
Yep. The last of the clones falls down, gasping for air. And we get into a lot of fight sequences here. So I don't know that we want to get into all the details, but this is Echo's fight where he gets stabbed in the back with the yellow blade. He throws down one of the operatives. He pulls up the blade. He gets knocked out by the Bola. CX2 holds him at blaster point. And this is where Hemlock walks in or standing over him and says, "You guys have failed." Going on there. And then Scorch walks in and again gives him another update. Basically says the central lab is gone. And this is where Omega, I love her little line there. It says, "Your data's gone," right? She says, "You failed and your data's gone." And he says, "I still have you." And then she says, "You're forgetting one thing. I have them." The confidence in her face, like what they did with the animation, looks so good. You can see her just like smirking the entire time she's delivering that line.
I wasn't feeling her confidence though, because they were all like Wreckers, like still groggy. I'm like, I don't know where you get this confidence from. Because if I look at these sad chaps, like, no, none of them are really filling me with any kind of ability here.
Well, I think she looked over and saw Wrecker stirring, because he is kind of stirring there.
Right. But I mean, still, that's not enough to really, you're in trouble now. Dad's coming up. Dad's waking up from his slumber. You don't want to wake Dad when he's napping.
Here, the thing about Wrecker is, and we've talked about this season in particular, he has that Superman effect, right? You have to contain him, because if he's out and about and wild, like there's nobody that can stop him. We kind of saw shades of that here. I mean, yeah, he's still lesser than he normally is because he's injured, but I think that's where Omega's confidence was like, okay, he's up, and it would be different if Crosshair was first up or Hunter was up, but this guy is a human wrecking machine. And so if nothing else, just pure from the chaos alone, this was probably going to be enough for her to, figure out her next move kind of thing. That's probably where the confidence was. And of course, this all plays out because he gets up and kicks the crap out of that spear operative and sends him, hitting CX2. CX2 goes unconscious. And this is where I was taking like copious notes on like who the hell was fighting who. And it was just like I have all the details here. I don't want to get into them because it's too complicated and confusing to explain it all. But I love the action sequence, and I love the fact that it took a couple shots to take them down. I'm not very clear on how some of these guys suddenly looked like they were dead and then popped up, and it was hard to keep track of throughout. But maybe that was the mystique of the clone troop or the operatives, and that there was maybe that just that many and they were that good kind of thing.
Well, I couldn't find out where Wrecker got shot either. So it wasn't until I did the audio description that it said he got shot in the arm.
Oh, so, right. Yeah. Echo, you're talking about, yeah?
No, Wrecker. Like Wrecker was shot in the arm.
Oh, okay. I thought I heard Echo was shot in the arm. Somebody was shot in the arm. I have that in my notes, but yeah, you're right. You don't really see it. It just happens so fast. There's like 4 or 5 different little mini battles that happen in the span of like 10 seconds during this whole sequence here.
Right. Yeah, that's why Wrecker was so, like, he's leaning back and he's like, you kind of like, okay, this is the end for Wrecker again type of thing.
Yep. Eventually Hunter gets up, and this is where Crosshair, he kicks CX2 as CX2 is coming out, and then shoves him back. And then of course that's when Hunter stabs him with the spear, which was good to kind of see that was. I was hoping Crosshair would get the final blow on him, but
That would have been nice. Yeah.
it would have been nice. But who cares? It's fine. He's dead. And after all that, they pick up the sniper rifle, and both Crosshair and Hunter limp off as they go after, because at this point Omega and Hemlock, he's already kind of handcuffed her. That's his insurance policy. He heads out, and they go out after him limping. We cut over to the gantry, which is where they're walking. Hemlock's kind of almost literally dragging Omega. It's raining. They're heading out further and further into down the gantry as far as possible, I guess. Oh, that's right. He took the receiver or whatever, that responder thing, to call in CX2 ship as well.
Right. Yep.
Excuse me. Let's see. This is where we get Wrecker smashing another one of these operatives. I think he just literally rams his head into it. I mean, that guy's dead. There's no way he survived that.
Right.
And then there's another one that almost kills Echo, but then that one reg, which I thought this was like a really good moment. Like, because the regs were just kind of there. They were in the background.
Yeah.
But the fact that this one got a chance to be the hero and no name, it was just awesome. I love the fact that he got that final shot on him and saved Echo on that. And of course, Wrecker is now, so the battle's over. Wrecker looks absolutely wrecked. Echo asks where everyone is. I thought Wrecker was really going to die in this sequence. Throughout all of this, especially because it felt like he was kind of having that last final heroic moment, and the way he was kind of putting up this last stand, kind of cornered in the back, or cornered animal kind of thing. But thankfully, that didn't happen. All right, now we get into like the heavy stuff. We're now with Scorch and Hemlock making their way out the gantry. They're walking outside. He calls his ship. Crosshair takes 2 shots at the engines, blows that up. They kind of established that as a thing earlier on. I can't remember if it was this season or last season, but
it was this season with at least it happened earlier this season when the operative took out
did the same thing, to their shuttle, right? So
right.
Payback's there. And and then let's talk about Scorch's death, because once that goes down, Scorch gets shot and he just falls over, and it's kind of an unceremonious death in a lot of ways. But at the same time, and we got to remember, like, this is Hunter and Crosshair, and there's no cover. I mean, I don't know what people are expecting Scorch to have done. I mean, they're in a very vulnerable position. Hemlock, not as much, because he's got that meat shield of Omega.
He's got a human shield, right?
Right. But outside of him getting behind them, which I don't think he would have done, there wasn't a lot he could do. And you got to give them credit. I mean, it's a fitting death, I think, for Scorch, even though he didn't necessarily become the character we thought we would see more of or get in the head of or anything like that. I thought it was a fitting death that at least he went out from, blaster fire from 2, amazing heroes, at least.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It was a bit unceremonious, and we want these, big villains to, and I'll put Scorch as like kind of big villain, because he was kind of the muscle, right? The enforcer, if you will, in a lot of ways. And to have some moment where you feel like there was a lot of tension and, who was going to win, and a little more of that. But at the same time, I mean, these guys are beat to hell. Like, what else do you want from Hunter and Crosshair at this point? Like, to get into a hand-to-hand combat fight, and they're on, like you said, they're on this really long gantry. And so, if anything, I liked it because it also showed that Crosshair and Hunter are skilled marksmen as well, and that they still have that ability, even though they're worse for wear. That they still have a little bit of that. Would have been great to have some other action sequence, sure, and that Scorch would go out like a champ, sure, but that the Empire goes out like a chump, I'm kind of okay with that sometimes too. I mean, sometimes they just need to be put back in their place, and so be it. So I'm kind of okay with it. I was actually just more surprised that Scorch died in general than how he died.
Yeah, he kind of had to be out of the picture, I guess, at this point too. So it narratively it makes sense.
Yeah, as soon as he went with Hemlock, I mean, if Hemlock's going to die, Scorch has got to go too, and he's going to be the first. So things fell into place pretty quick as soon as he went with him. But I was hoping that he would survive in some other way, but that didn't really pan out.
Hey, Clips Films Melbourne, welcome. Says it would have been cool to see the Zilla Beast eat Hemlock. Yeah,
that would have been very appropriate. Yeah,
very appropriate, very poetic.
Yep.
He also says, though, killing Scorch reminds me of Transformers G1 movie when Megatron kills some Autobots in the shuttle. I'm glad you brought that up because I'm a huge Transformers fan. That was Ironhide and Cliffjumper, I think, that get shot in the shuttle there.
Yeah, thanks for bringing up childhood trauma. Appreciate that.
He's not talking about Optimus. Come on. That's a whole.
No,
nother...
it was that opening sequence on Transformers though. Where
Oh,
they
that
just,
one
like,
did it too. Well, that's yeah, that's true because their
Yeah.
eyes do they go out and they turn gray and yeah.
Yeah, but just that they killed all these Transformers. Like, all right, I'm not gonna do this. I'm not gonna do this.
All right, thanks for bringing that back up. Okay, this is where now Hemlock puts the blaster up to Omega's head, says that's far enough. And Omega says, you won't get past them. You need me alive. Again, she's kind of seething in confidence because she feels like she has the upper hand, even though I don't think anybody feels like Hemlock doesn't feel like that. And I don't know that the Bad Batch, like I don't think Hunter and Crosshair feel like they're in a position to do really anything. They feel kind of powerless, but she knows there's something about it. You know, and that, I think that finally seeps over into Hunter because we get a word from him when he's talking to Crosshair about that. But Hemlock's, gets closer. He's starting to move closer and closer to the edge of the gantry. Again, handrails lacking, railing lacking greatly here. But he says, if I go over, you go over. And this is where Omega pulls out the little tool. And Hunter then says, shoot the binders. It's just, there's something about the visuals and the pacing and the acting and everything around it is just absolutely perfect. I'm not doing it justice, but just the way he delivers, even just that line, shoot the binders. It actually reminded me of Shoot the Hostage from Speed, the way he delivers it, but that's a whole nother thing. And then Crosshair says that, he can't too close because Omega's there. It's not going to work. And he says she knows what to do, Crosshair. Wait for her, then take the shot. And then you get them kind of meeting eyes, Crosshair looking at Omega. And this part of this is also like later on, I think Rob asked at the very beginning saying, he found it surprising that she went and hugged Crosshair first. But we got to remember, they were kind of, again, silently communicating, no nonverbal communication happening here, and timing this perfectly. It had to be timed perfectly. And you got to remember, Crosshair is shooting with his offhand because he lost the other one, literally lost the other one. So
and he has no confidence. And you see him take that deep breath before it, like, okay, I can do this. I'm going to relax. I'm going to do the things that, maybe not meditating, but those types of, drills that he was doing that Omega taught him, right? So I think those are the things that he's got to recall, and that she shows her appreciation for him having faith in her, but also, that he's listening to her and that he came through and that he can do it, and reinforcing that with positivity, right?
Yeah, right. And that's not taking anything away from the relationship. And we've talked about this season, the relationship that they developed, right, which has been kind of special. It doesn't take anything away from that. Again, it's just the fact that they did this together, right? They pulled this off together. And also keep in mind, Crosshair, in the back of his mind, the last time he had to take a shot that had to count, he missed.
Yeah.
Right. So that's nagging at him in the back of his head as well.
Yeah. That was for those that might not remember, that was the tracker when Omega was taken. Right. So he was trying to shoot the tracker on the ship, and it fell well short. It didn't happen. He was a little bit late. Yeah.
So he shoots the binders. Of course, it's very successful. And then just that, again, the way the visual...
She stabs him in the leg. You forgot that part.
Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, stabs him in the leg. When then she kind of pushes her hand up, and that's when the binders get shot. And at that point, again, I don't know what it is about I think they took down the volume everywhere because you could really... It was just kind of focused on the blaster shots and the methodical pacing at which Hunter takes shot after shot after shot after shot to put him finally down, sending him over the side. I thought it was great. It was very dramatic. I loved every moment of it.
We didn't see a body, just saying.
Oh, stop it. Don't start that. Okay, so Omega runs over to both of them. She stops, and I think she's looking at both. And I think, she goes to Crosshair because, of what had just happened. But then she does hug both of them. And you can see, it was kind of dark. You can see it if you really focus or if you take a screenshot and turn up the gamma. But in the audio description, it talks about Crosshair's eyes start to swell with tears. Yeah. Which I thought was, I don't know that you would catch that if you're just watching it for the first time or even the second time, but
especially with the rain. Yeah.
Especially with the rain. Yeah. But the idea that was written in there and that he was having that kind of an emotional reaction to it all is just, pure gold as far as I'm concerned, given the journey that he's been on.
Yeah. And it said they have both Crosshair and Hunter both closed their eyes. And so they were definitely leaning into the moment, which was really sweet.
Yep. So they all hug. They all jump into a shuttle. They leave Tantus. They leave Wayland behind. And then Tarkin's destroyers show up. And they show up like almost immediately. Like it's one of these blasts into hyperspace, and then boom, they pop out.
We saw a brand new Star Destroyer too. That was
I know,
cool.
They do look new. Three's a lot. Like one's enough, but the fact that they sent three, I guess maybe because Tarkin's there. But
But the old two of them were the older ones, but then you had the brand new Star Destroyer coming through in the lead. That was pretty neat.
yeah. Oh, nice callback here. Rob says it reminds me of Ray Sloan getting shot and going over the edge of the bridge.
Yeah.
So Ray Sloan being a character from
Rebels.
post Return of the Jedi in the Heir to the Empire, or not Heir to the Empire. Oh my God, Empire's End series of books. Okay, so they show up. They basically do there's a whole sequence here, right, where they're doing kind of an assessment of what's happened. Tarkin gets the update. You know, he learns that a lot of the wings of the base are just destroyed or beyond repair at this point. Hemlock's dead. The troopers have been found dead, and a lot of the operatives. I think they say I'm not sure they say operatives specifically, but I would assume they were kind of talking about those. So, at least confirming that, yeah, although we don't see the bodies, the Empire found the bodies. So don't start bringing up theories of these guys coming back. They're not coming back. They're dead. Sorry, Jim.
They all perished.
They all perished. And then, of course, Tarkin's like, yeah, I don't care about any of this. Was any of the research salvageable? Because that's the most important thing. And, of course, no, the databanks were destroyed.
Reallocate the funds.
Yeah. Wrap it up, boys. We're out of here kind of thing. Because, I mean, he basically says, Tantus is supposed to be closed pretty much indefinitely at this point, and then all the funds are now going to be redirected to Project Stardust, which is, of course, the Death Star. Anything on that before we go to Pabu and kind of wrap things up before the epilogue?
Nope.
All right.
Let's keep moving.
Pabu. Oh, yeah. I mean, Pabu got a happy ending too, all things considered.
Yeah,
I
no
got
Empire.
questions.
Yeah.
I got questions about, the Empire and what they knew and why they didn't come back, but we'll leave that for the, loose hanging Chads episode that we'll do on the Bad Batch.
Right.
But we start with the opening. There's 2 shuttles there. They're eating more sushi. I was so excited that they showed the sushi. It looks really good. Oh my God, I need like Pabu sushi in a bad way. And the clones are eating it. I don't know if they've ever had sushi before. It's really good stuff. But lots of clones are kind of milling about, walking around. You can see it. So, a lot of them made it off more than I think that in that one shuttle. I thought in my own way, I figured that maybe some, they had clones other places. We never, was it Pantora? I don't know where they were holding them all, but I don't know if it felt like some of them were here. Like I didn't understand why there were 2 shuttles there on top of Rex's shuttle. It felt like he brought some of them there because there was way more than I was expecting.
Well, one was Emery's ship that escaped, and the other one was the shuttle that they stole. To escape.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Yep.
and then
Thank you.
Echoes. Yeah,
That makes sense. All right, so that is just the folks that they got from Mount Tantus, and let's see. We get that one quick shot of all the kids. So you got Eva, Jax, Sammy, and Bayron, right?
Right.
But then they show Deke, Mox, Stack, and Liana, who we hadn't really seen as well. They're all kind of, I think they were, eating food or something. Later on, we see a shot with them, and they're all eating ice cones, which is the Star Wars equivalent of snow cones, as well. There's another, moment where you can see Fee and Shep in the background. They're kind of talking to each other. There's some clones that are talking to as well. And this is where we cut to Emery and Echo, and they're talking about, the childhood that they never had, looking at the kids as they're playing. And she says, our lives have never been our own, kind of thing. And Echo says, hey, you have more work to do, essentially, right? Why don't you come with me to Pantora? Let's talk to Senator Chuchi and see. I'm glad they brought that up because that felt like there was something that was dropped. I don't know what's going to become of that, but this idea of like fighting for the rights of the clones seemed like it was a pretty big deal last season, and we really didn't see much of it at all. I mean, we got the cameo, or we got an appearance of Senator Chuchi, but we didn't really get a whole lot of any more on that little storyline there. But I'll pause right there. Anything you want to say about, eventually Emery heads off with Echo, and she boards the ship at the end, so they're kind of a thing now. Like I said, I shipped them already, but they're going to be doing some work together soon.
Yeah, she took the goggles off too, right? That's kind of a big moment. So she's shedding her old life. I like that she's going to be integrated and that she does have value, and that Echo is warming to her a little bit there as well. And that she's right. They do have work to do. And she wants to atone for all the things that she's done. And she feels like she can actually provide something of value. So it's great that they're going to be able to do this. I like that we got the Pantoran reference with Chuchi. I think was never, that's like a loose end that I'm okay with the way that they handled that one, because it was always it was a bit of a front and center thing with the clones and decommissioning and treating them fairly. But that story arc kind of played itself and went through it. and we haven't really seen the total aftermath of it, but we've seen enough of what the actual aftermath is, which I think it was the point. But now they'll kind of come back around to that and say, well, here's the reality of what this is actually meant for the clones, right? So
Yeah.
so there's more to be told in that story in the more political arena, perhaps. But I like that there's other things for Emery to be involved with too. So but it was a nice thing. I mean, we got to see all the characters. Yeah, was there a lot of interactions or dialogue or anything like that? No, there was none, right? So that's a little bit disappointing. It felt like we were just kind of wrapping things up. We had to get a little screen time for everyone, but I like for the core characters of the Bad Batch though. We at least we got that closure and what's coming next and what's possible. So I think that ended up okay.
Yeah. Omega's line here too. She says, well, what about the rest of the clones? Will they stay here on Pabu? And Hunter says, well, it's up to them. They're free to follow their own paths. This is a line that comes back later on in the epilogue, right? So keep that in mind. Those things are tied together. There's a reason for it. Another line is, we've all fought enough battles for one lifetime. Now we get to choose what we want to be. She says that almost verbatim to Hunter in the epilogue. And he says she says whatever we want, kid, whatever we want. And this is where she rests her head on his arm, which I thought was really sweet. She closes her eyes. And in the audio description, they do a beautiful job of explaining that for the first time ever, I think, or it says in a long time, she suddenly has, she's free of worry. Right. Which I thought was beautiful. So, Crosshair, Wrecker come in. You can see Wrecker Crosshair's all in black and his little stubby hand now. He needs to talk to Echo. There's some cool stuff that he can do there. But yeah, fades to black, and we go into the epilogue. Any final thoughts on that before we talk about the epilogue?
Kind of a sweet framing shot at the end. They're all still looking pretty rough, but
yeah,
it was nice. Kind of the family shot.
Yeah, it's a mural shot. It's something we'll see. I think it'll be immortalized.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, mural shot.
Yeah, it's the mural shot to Rebels. It's the equivalent of that for me, right? We get to see all of them together and having their happy ever after kind of thing. So, but yeah, loved it the way it ended. The audio description, it said they sat there through the night.
Yeah,
did you hear that?
Yeah, they did say that. I was wondering if that was just trying to sequence in that there was something else coming rather than saying fade to black. Like they usually do. Usually they say fade to black before the credits start. But,
yeah. I was like, okay, maybe they did sit there and just all day. I can see it. I mean, why wouldn't you, right? It's over.
But that's not what happened on screen, though. So for those that couldn't see it, it wasn't exactly what happened, but
there wasn't a time lapse that happened in that. That wasn't a time lapse.
Because it was very sunny still when the screen went dark.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the epilogue. And we're at 138. I will probably do more on this, so we'll just kind of stick to the meat and potatoes of what's going on here. But we open up. It's a very early morning. And as soon as she comes on screen, I was like, holy crap, it's Omega. And she's older. I mean, there was no doubt in my mind at that point. She's carrying a duffel bag. She's got that flight jacket on. Later on, we see the patch, but I didn't get a chance to blow it up. I think it's one of the patches from like either Crosshair or Echo or one of them. I don't know which one. Or maybe it's a clone. Maybe it's the Bad Batch logo that we've seen used before.
Yeah.
But again, I haven't had a chance to go back and look at that specifically. But what killed me was when the lights came on and we see that, and I posted this today on social media, what really got to me was the fact that she was using Hunter's bandana to hold her ponytail up in the back. I mean, I was just like, oh, that's poetic stuff as far as I'm concerned. But anyways, she turns on the lights and then Hunter turns on his own lights. His dad's always up, right? He's one step ahead of her, and he's Hunter. And we see Batcher there along with him as well. And Gonky is in the shuttle waiting for her. So to think that there's adventures now for Gonky is another just, bonus as far as I'm concerned. And then we get into the dialogue where she says, thought you could just sneak off, or he says that, sorry. We see a very older Hunter. He's got gray hair coming in now. He's actually wearing like normal clothes, I would say. He says, time hasn't dulled all my senses. And she says, this shouldn't be a surprise. Rebellion needs pilots now more than ever. I made my choice, Hunter. I want to do more. And that's the key word there. I made my choice. So he told her everybody has a choice. This is the choice now that she's come back and she's telling him that she's made. And he responds back saying, and we want you to be safe. Like full on parent mode at this point, right? Again, speaking to, if you've ever had kids that have left, you just want the best for them. You want them to be taken care of and you want them to be safe as much as possible. And I'll just keep going through here. She says, you have, but I'm not a kid anymore. You don't have to worry about me. And I love this. Another line, you're our kid, Omega. You always will be. Oh, that one gets me. And then she says, Hunter, you all fought enough. This is my fight. I'm ready. And he says, yes, I know you are, but I'm not. And they hug. All right. You want to touch on that, or you want me to keep going here?
Keep going. We'll kind of
Okay, we'll wrap it up.
Yeah.
I'm literally got all the dialogue here. So
I just want to see if you'll break into tears.
No, I'm not. I'll keep it together here. That's kind of sick of you, actually. But he says, she says, keep an eye on Wrecker and Crosshair while I'm gone. Batcher 2. He finally says, off you go. She scratches Batcher one last time on the head. And then he says, Omega, if you ever need us, we'll be there. I think we might see them again at some point. Like, I would like to see, similar to what we saw with Rex and Wolf and Gregor, I would like to see them. If we ever have another series and we flash forward and get to see the old timers, these geriatric clones working together again, I'd love to see that. I'm down for it.
It does feel very similar to that, doesn't it? That was the first thing that came to mind for me too. Is like, okay, this is definitely going to be like Rebels with Rex and in company of like, how can the old farts get back in the game, and are they a little rusty, and how's the dynamics changes and the weird banter between them? I could just see it with Wrecker and Crosshair.
Yep.
Just this old curmudgeon-y group, like just grumpy old men.
Yeah. And I would think it wouldn't necessarily be like a season 1 thing, because you'd want to establish her journey independent of, her past and her father's. But I could see where, in season 2, much like Kaz did with his dad, or, any other examples, not to call in a resistance. Wow, there we go. But, she could call in a favor during season 2 where she needs some expert help or something, and she calls the dads and they show up, and that would be a great thing. But I do feel like she is going to show back up or they will show back up at some point. That's enough for her. She's so excited that, she's gotten dad's permission, essentially. She runs off, jumps into the ship, runs past Gonki. We see the Tuco doll sitting there, which I thought was really sweet that she still had that. Man, that adjusting to the text goggles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those guys, jerks.
Yeah, they'll get you every time.
Yeah, very touching moment there. She fires up the engines. She gives a little 2-finger salute. He salutes back, and she flies away. And he tells Batcher, it's all right, girls. She'll be fine. And then she flies away as the ship kind of goes across the moon there. And that's kind of how it ends.
Yeah, it's such a great epilogue. I mean, it just shows you don't have to do a lot to really, get the emotional response you're looking for from the crowd, and to kind of open your doors up to new adventures. We've invested 3 years into Omega. And the clones story is coming to an end, or is at an end now, it seems like. And so that Omega takes that to a different level. I'm not quite sure where the adventures pick up, or is it during her, growing up a little bit more before this moment, or is it after this? Where does she fit in? Do you go and now revisit more Rebellion era stuff with Omega? It's a little hard to see how that all fits in, but you have opportunities now of, the kind of the rogue squadrons of the Rebellion era, and does Omega somehow fit in with some of those stories, and how that worked out? And where did she fit within the Rebellion? How did she know Rex was there too? I mean, there's other questions that get involved with there. So, and as well as like where Echo fits and all that stuff too. So there's a lot of questions you could go with all of this, but it's really great though that we do get the recap and remembering the lessons from a decade or 2 decades, whatever it is, earlier, when Hunter is saying, hey, we all get to make our own decision from here on out, whatever we want to do. And clearly she's been training and keeping tabs on things. And, this is her era's war, right? The Clone Wars, and that's exactly what she's talking about. The Clone Wars era, that was her dad's fight. That was her brother's fight. Now the Rebellion is this empire that she's grown up in, and that she's grown up seeing, just do tyranny across the galaxy. And it's her turn to be able to do something and get involved and actually make a difference in that way too, even though she helped at the very end of the last one. But this is her fight now. And so this is where I think she feels like she's got that ownership, right? You trade one war for another effectively, and she's seen enough, and she's, she feels like she's trained, and that's a credit to her brothers or her dads of saying that, we've done everything we can to give you all the tools that you need to be able to, to be successful and to, try to accomplish this thing that seems like an impossible task, but it's the right thing to do. And she's always been compelled to do the right thing. And, Hunter and them will going to support that. And if they need her, just give us a call. We'll be there.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how much time has lapsed. I'm assuming it's probably about 8 to 10 years.
I've seen some people say it's like 2 decades, but it seems like she would be much. No. Yeah, I didn't get that either. I thought this would have been like, I'm with you. I think about 10 years or something like that. It's like, it looks like she's in her early 20s, I think.
Yeah, I don't think it's I don't think it's 8, or maybe it's closer to 10. I could see maybe 10 to 12 years. And I get the idea too, that, or the sense that she has been doing something because she says, I want to do more. Right. So she has been doing something. Maybe it's been kind of behind the scenes, kind of low key stuff. Maybe it's helping, politically or whatever. But she definitely wants to get her hands dirty. And like you said, this is her war. She's got a bone to pick with the Empire for everything that's going on. For anybody that says, well, because I mean, you think about it, Omega is such a competent character. I mean, she is so experienced and so skilled and has been brought up by the best of the best that the Republic has to offer. You got to think that she is a superhero. Like, she's got to stand out wherever she is. And then so that begs the question of like, okay, well, why have we not heard of her? And they've already kind of broke this. They've already set the precedence with the Ghost. Hera Syndulla, one of the greatest, arguably the greatest pilot of all time, has been living throughout this entire decade, and yet she never showed up in the movies. I think that's okay. There are a lot of wars. It's a big galaxy. There are tons of adventures out there that she probably had, and we know she had, that we just haven't heard yet or haven't seen yet. And I would expect that to be the same with Omega. I don't know that we'll ever get like as far as the timing goes, I think we're still before we get to technically Ezra and everybody, but she has adventures with Hera, who she saw back in season 1 or whatever it is. Maybe she pairs up with her and they go on and form up their own kind of squadron. I would expect, knowing Dave Filoni, whatever he has next is probably going to have Hera in it. It may have Omega in it. And, like you said, maybe it's Rogue Squadron of some sort, or some Rogue Squadron kind of storytelling that happens there. But it's not far-fetched to think that she's out there and she exists. I'm excited. I can't wait to see what she's capable of now, being as old as she is and having even more years of experience under her belt. She's a great character. I love the fact what they did with her.
Yeah, and I think in One versus CPU saying, and hooking up with Hera makes a lot of sense too. And I agree with that and agree with you. I think this is where they've had the connection before, and so that they would somehow get back in touch with each other and be able to keep track of what was going on and saying, hey, we need help. We need pilots, and who better to recruit pilots than Hera Syndulla, So you have Hera, you have Rex. I mean, you have others that they've come across over the years, I'm sure, that are involved with the rebellion. So now's the time to start recruiting and to pull all of those, pull everyone together and be able to actually make this assault. Depending on where this is at within the rebellion era timeline here, we don't exactly know when this is. If this is at the beginning or if this is towards Return of the Jedi or something like that, we don't know. But it's somewhere in this. So maybe 10 years is maybe a little bit light. Maybe it is closer to like 15, because what was it between Order 66 and A New Hope? It was like about 18 years, right?
Yeah.
Not quite 20 years.
Right.
18 or 19 years. So yeah, if 2 or 3 years have gone by since the beginning of this, I mean, it's 15 or 16 years maybe. So maybe a shade under 2 decades of what the gap would be here. But anyway, it just makes a lot of sense. I mean, Hera, again, a leader in the rebellion and showing her mettle and showing her worth, throughout the Rebel series, it all just lines up and makes sense, and it all works. It's how you fit those stories in. Like, where do you pick that story up, and what story you want to tell with that is, I think, probably the more interesting conversation to go about what's possible now.
You said the word assault, and I thought that'd be cool if they called it Rebel Assault. Kind of a throwback to the old.
That would be fun. The old video game.
Old video game. Yeah.
I played the hell out of that game.
Oh man, you and me both, bro. Yeah, so I think we'll kind of, I think let's wrap things up, and we'll table kind of, I've still got a lot of thoughts and speculation outside of I want to talk about, of course, the epilogue in more detail, more emotional detail, but I also want to, all the loose end stuff and the speculation of, kind of what we were talking about here with Hera and what are some of the other possibilities. And we'll put a show together and do that. It'll probably be a Patreon exclusive. Sorry. But yeah, we'll plan on that, and we can expand and get really kind of crazy with the tinfoil hat theories. And by then, we'll firm up. I'd like to firm up the timeline, which I just haven't had a chance to do. I haven't had a chance to sit down and do the math of, where things make sense. And then we can even poke around with, okay, if it's, 10 years, maybe this is what we expect. If it's, 15, 16 years, here are other possibilities. That would be kind of fun to tease all that out as well.
Yep, it would be.
You know what else is fun?
Yeah, what I like teasing out is all of our live stream people who are out in the chat. So again, cantinacast.com/YouTube. If you're listening to this, if you want to come out and join a live stream, join the conversation, put your theories out there, put your ideas, what you loved most. You could be like one of these amazing people: Steph, Sky, Gaming with Miles, Qui-Gon J, My Star Wars Guy, JJ Skywalker, One Up versus CPU, Jeff, Hard Counter at Skywalker's Academy, and Clips Films, Melbourne. If I missed anyone, not intentional. We appreciate you all coming out. We hope you enjoyed the content. We hope you come back for all of the extra stuff and be on the lookout for what Albert's going to put together. And we'll let you know when we're going to come back and close up all the loose ends, or at least identify the loose ends. Maybe some of the theories we were hoping that we would get right. The path with Obi-Wan, or with Qui-Gon, or not Qui-Gon Jinn, Quinlan Vos and Ventress, all the other things that we came out and kind of speculated that were possible, and what panned out, what didn't pan out, and what stories maybe we thought we were going to get that they just kind of evaporated.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I want to, where's her crossbow? I hope that makes an appearance. Her new crossbow. Remember? Echo gave her the new one?
yeah,
Never saw it.
that's true. Yeah, she's just kind of single use purpose, and then it's
Yeah.
like so uncivilized.
I got a list, man. There's a whole list long. So it'll be fun to talk about all that stuff.
Yeah, the midichlorians. I mean, the whole Force thing. Were Ventress, like what was that for? You know, so many questions now.
Yep. Okay, we'll let me just quickly again just recap. We got May the 4th Be With Y'all coming out. That'll be a show that we'll edit and put together probably after May 4th, but we've got Tales of the Empire coming out in 2 days. Jonesy and I will be here to break all that down. Plus, we're going to do character specific episodes like we talked about with Morgan Elsbeth and Barasafi. We've got Bug, the storyline that is probably about Morgan Elsbeth. We'll be covering that with Lauren and I at some point next week. And then we've got the Phantom Menace celebrating the 25th anniversary. We got a number of shows that we've got there, and we need to put a Fact Boy show together for top 3 moments of season 3, and maybe even one for the series. I don't know. We'll kind of figure out which makes sense, but it would be great to get some guys back, and ladies and gentlemen, back onto the air, Patreon members, and talk about all of our favorite moments now that we are at the series finale of The Bad Batch.
Absolutely.
Okay. Great. Thanks everybody for being here, and we'll see you guys Sunday if you can make it, and if not, then join us next week as well. Oh, by the way, hey, I have new credits. Yay! So I'll update those. I'm going to roll those right now. Thanks again. We'll see you guys here very soon.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.